Snow, ice, mud, rain. Winter can be a challenging time of year, but is still my preferred season over summer when it comes to living in a van full time. In this video, I'm going to share 10 ways that I stay warm during the winter season living in my van, but also if you'd like to know why I prefer living in my van in winter over summer, be sure to stick around to the end of this video. Mate, it's freezing, absolutely freezing. It's really cold, that wind is horrible. So these tips are not going to be shared in any particular order, and many of them are fairly obvious. But let's start with tip number 1, always a good place to start. And that is my Chinese diesel heater. I use it to stay warm. So typically, I don't tend to have my van sort of warmer than 10 degrees. Right now it's 6 degrees. Obviously outside is much colder, it's 0. But I use my heater to sort of top up the temperature, particularly in the morning and the evening, or if I'm static working. But I do find that a combination of all of the things that I'm going to share, all of the 10 tips and ways that I stay warm, they work together really, really well. And therefore I don't need to use my heater as often as you might think. I'm also a very warm person in general, hence the shorts. And again, it's just not something that I use hugely. But when I do use it, I tend to have it on a low setting. I much prefer to sort of pump out the heat on a very steady setting. And as I say, sort of top up that temperature just very gradually so that it also doesn't just rise and disappear out of the van, which is very frustrating. You sort of turn it on, you get warm, you turn it off, you get cold very quickly. But also 2 other things. So I have a separate diesel tank in the boot, which it draws from. And that drawing pipe is actually quite high on the diesel tank. And so I have to keep it quite well topped up. And what that means is I do travel around with spare fuel, spare diesel, just in case I do need to top it up. I have been caught short a few times actually this winter. So that's sort of what encouraged me to carry spare fuel around, which is really nice. And basically just means that if I have a breakdown or anything happens, I'm pretty well covered for warmth in that sense. But the second thing is you've got here the outlet pipe, and this is really not my greatest make, but it works. So I have the pipe here, it's a flexi pipe, and then basically I've just got this dual split top on it. So when the heater's on, it directs heat upwards and it directs heat sort of downwards towards my feet, which is really, really great because it sort of warms up my core body temperature and also my feet, which I do struggle with sort of keeping warm much more than my overall body temperature. And then again, sort of heat rises naturally, we all know that. And so by directing it downwards, I find it really beneficial because it sort of warms up the van a little bit more and sort of just limits the cold spots that I have in the cupboards, under the benches, and well, all over the place actually. So that's tip number 1, Chinese diesel heater. I use it. All right, pretty much ready to rumble. The only problem I'm having on this very cold morning, whereby it's -9, my windscreen is frozen on the inside rather than the outside. Oops. So I've almost fully defrosted it. You can see like that is a solid layer of ice. Tip number 2, please don't shout at me for health and safety of this one, is candles. I use candles. I pretty much always have a candle lit when I'm in my van. I have it just nipped away on the side of my sink so that if it gets knocked, it's going to fall into my sink. But also, I'm very, very mindful that it's there. But I use candles. Basically, they just put out a little bit of extra heat and can be a really nice accompanying feature for like the Zen mode of my van, which I really like. There's nothing more complicated than that. Candles, soy candles, brilliant, love them. Good morning, team. It's a new day. It's a snow day. Now, there's not a lot about. Let me tell you something. It's cold. Snow flurries have obviously come down in the night. There's a lot of black ice about. All right, tip number 3. How do I stay warm? I stay warm with layers. Onions have layers, kids. Yeah. No, but honestly, layers. When it gets really cold, I tend to put some sort of thermal base layers on, probably merino, which sit very close to the body and lock in the warmth, and then just wear layers on top of that. But it works really, really well. I mean, I don't need to overcomplicate this. As an outdoorsy person, or as an outdoorsy YouTube channel, most of us know about the layering system. Essentially, it's rather than having one big, puffy, cumbersome jacket or top on or trousers on. It's about having lots of smaller layers so that you can add and take away and manage your temperature through that system. So layering, I honestly, it works in a tent, it works when you're hiking, works in a van. Don't overthink it. These are my frozen shorts from last night. Oh, look at that, that's ridiculous. They stand up by themselves. That's so good. Well, anyway, my frozen shoes. Yeah. No worries. Right, tip number 4 is kind of a hybrid tip on how I stay warm. Are these tips? I don't even know what these are. I guess these are the tips. But anyway, way number 4 that I stay warm is to add to the layering is I use blankets. So when I'm sitting here working, quite often I'll have a blanket on my lap just to add a little bit of extra pocket over my legs. And sometimes I'll drape that blanket over the outlet pipe here on the heater when I do have it on. So all the heat is just coming into my blanket and it's like, ooh, that's quite nice. It's very, very cozy. But then also rugs. Rugs is the other part of tip number 4. As much as I am vegan, I do love a sheepskin rug. They are a byproduct of the meat industry, and for me, it gives me great joy actually to support farmers in buying wool products, or in this case, a skin product. It's not very nice, is it? But yes, the most contradictory vegan on the planet, quite possibly, they say, sitting here also in a leather hat. Although this has been around longer than I've been a vegan, just saying. So yes. Rugs, layering the floor. The floor can get very cold. In fact, it is very cold. But just by literally putting rugs down on the floor, it helps to protect my wee tootsies from the cold and just gives me a little bit of extra insulation bottom up. Easy peasy. So this sheepskin is actually my seat cover. I sit on it here. But I thought I'd just test to see what it's like. I'd like to get a second one. So then I have this whole area covered, which would be very nice. And quite often this one I put under here when I'm sitting at the table, when it's in table mode. Right, actually, speaking of tip number 5, bear with. Ugh, where's my brew? I don't normally allow shoes inside. It's a shoe-free zone. Whew, jeez, that's rather warm. So tip number 5 is warm drinks. I use thermoses. So in here, in my kitchen cupboard, I've got a couple of thermoses, 1 litre thermoses, and frankly, I fill them up with warm water and I drink warm things. Having coffee, tea, lemon, ginger, honey, mint, water, whatever, absolutely lovely. It helps to warm you up on the inside out, and it's a technique I use a lot, partly because I'm somebody who has to drink a ridiculous amount every single day, so that helps, but it just warms me up. So staying topped up with warm drinks works a wee wonder. This is the loch I went for a swim in yesterday. It appears to be frozen this morning. Oh, did you hear that? Wait. Ready? Again, listen to the ice. It's like electric. Amazing. So tip number 6 is synonymous with tip number 5 and warm water, but ultimately I make hot water bottles, or the equivalent. So this is my bed hot water bottle, which I sleep with, curled up. A really good tip if you're camping or in a van and you want to really ensure your whole body is circulating that warmth, is to actually put it sort of between your legs. And what that means is the heat's going to go down as the blood sort of circulates to your feet and keep your feet nice and warm. Rather than sort of putting it right against your core, because that warm blood has a lot further to travel to get to your feet. So that's a good little tip there. But also, when you're camping, I'm suddenly going into camping tips now. If you don't have a hot water bottle, Nalgene's are designed to be heat resistant, so you can put hot water into those. And every now and then I will fill up a Nalgene as well if it's a really cold night. But usually the layering, the blanket, all the other things works together really nicely so that I can stay warm and toasty. So that's tip number 6, hot water bottles. yeah. But I found this cool pull-in. I think it's a cool pull-in anyway. I can't see anything. I had a little wander down to the loch. It looks very rocky, but the plan is to go for a swim in the morning. And yeah, just feeling over the moon. I'm absolutely loving the process of just driving somewhere and finding somewhere to pull in. And I just feel like I've got really lucky this evening. It seems like a very serene spot. There's the sound of running water to the left. There's no one around. The loch, the trees, and the good wild beauty. All right, tip number 7 is something that I use every single day because I'm constantly on the move. It's very rare that I'm actually based in one place for 2-3 days in a row. And that's partly why living in a van just works so well for me, because I'm on the road, kids. So driving somewhere, when it's cold, I pump the heating on. When I know I'm about half an hour away from where I'm going to try and pitch up or pull up, I turn the heating on and I put it on the feet and the windscreen so that it's just like blasting out. And it's hilarious because it can be like -9, -10 outside. And I'm just there in like a tank top in my van, like, ah yeah, living the high life. But it's just because I make it so warm. And then the heat from the cab then transfers into the back here. So then when I'm parked up and I arrive in the back of my van, so my house part of the van, I don't need to necessarily put the heating on straight away because it works wonders. So for me, that's kind of like my renewable energy, is I do as much as I possibly can when I'm driving. And that translates into other tips as well, like charging, using my fridge, whatever. When I'm stationary, things go off, but it's the same for heating the van. I make the most of the engine, which is naturally generating heat to warm up my van on the move.
You keeping guard? I'm gonna need that towel, mate. I'm gonna need that towel.
Okay, tip number 8 is possibly my favorite because this is my first thing I tend to do. I'm so proud of myself for like hijacking my brain, but these days when I start to feel cold, it just translates to I need to move. And that can be really hard in a van. Let me tell you something. If you want to be someone who gets your 10,000 steps a day, it's like not even a step across my van. So yeah, I have to actually get out to get those steps in and get any kind of movement. But basically, if the weather's looking appropriate, I will go outside. I'll go for a cycle, go for a run, go for a walk, whatever. I will just move my body and get that body temperature up with the heart pumping, blood flowing. But if it's really rubbish weather outside, or it's dark or whatever, I'm just not feeling that mojo, then I will create space on the floor here and I will do some exercises. So I use exercise bands all the time. They work so well in a van because they don't need loads of space, but you can do loads of different exercises with them. I also have dumbbells. I have a ridiculous amount of dead weight in this van. Doesn't take me over the weight limit, but I have weights here. Then I use them. I literally use those. I have a kettlebell as well. I'll do core exercises. I'll do squats, lunges. Can't do walking lunges. Doesn't work, but static lunges. It's really great. It's amazing how quickly I can warm myself up just by getting my heart rate up. And then I don't need to use the heater or a blanket or anything else, because usually I'm sweating profusely. So either I'm really unfit or I'm highly motivated, or a combination of all the different things. So yeah, that's my next tip, is basically move. I move, man. I love moving. I like to move it. I like to move it. Okay, moving on. Next tip. All right, penultimate tip. This kind of translates on from exercise and moving and getting my heart rate up. But this is something I actually started to do with my camping, and my wild camping in particular. I noticed that when I was getting into my sleeping bag at night, I would be cold, even if the ambient temperature was quite warm. And I sort of worked out that it was to do with moisture on my skin. And it's just some weird thing that my body does. In a sense, moisture on the skin equals feeling cold. So basically on the trail, I would and do have a wash every single day. Whether I'm out camping in polar conditions, I'll have a snow bath, or whether I'm, in a lovely subtropical somewhere or other, or high in the mountains or on a beach or whatever, I will have a wash, and that will be fresh water, probably cold water, and I will rinse myself off. And what that means is when I get into my sleeping bag, I'm a lot more comfortable, and that weird thing that my body does, feeling cold, doesn't actually happen. In fact, quite the opposite happens. It's like it kickstarts the heat engine and I start to feel warm, which is amazing. So that's something I've translated to living in a van, is I will have a wash every single day. This is not about hygiene, this is about warmth and heat generation. So I have a little bowl and I will fill that with some warm water and a little cloth, and I'll just literally have a quick wash down, a bowl wash as I call it. If I'm at the gym, I'll have a shower. If I'm somewhere else, you know, I have a wash. But my favorite way of washing, and this is something I've been doing a lot this winter, particularly because I'm based up here in Scotland, is I will go for a swim. I will go and sit in a loch, whether it's surrounded or covered in ice or not. I will get in there, I will have a little 5 minutes. I try and count to 300 seconds if I can, or 5 minutes on my watch, and I see that as my wash. And trust me, by the time you get back in, you got the heater on, your body is just like, what just happened? And there's like beautiful prickly feeling. The natural heat generation is so lovely. And then when you curl into bed in the evening, it's just like, that was good. That was mission accomplished, you know. So that's probably my favorite tip, because it generally involves some kind of like adventure or just standing naked by the van having a wash, which is how it goes. I don't do it when people are around. There's a hope there aren't people around. Moving on, final tip. Tip number 10. This is just one of the best feelings in the entire world. I've just gone for a swim in the loch. It's late autumn, it's really, really cold outside. I have the heating on in my van, I'm just defrosting in my dry robe, and it's so snuggly in here. It's just so nice. Like, I know this is obviously the euphoria after being in cold water, but this just feels like the ultimate self-sufficiency and the ultimate freedom. I can go wherever I want, I can do whatever I want, I can be so close to nature, and yet I can maintain some of the absolute luxuries of modern life, like heating. It's brilliant. So tip number 10 is actually quite a depressing one. I probably shouldn't have ended on this one. But basically, I live in darkness. So if I want light, I need windows, right? But windows equals heat loss. I didn't convert this van, okay? This was a van that I bought pretty much fully converted. I would say my dad, more than I, has done some work on this van, thank you. And I've sort of just watched and told him what I want doing. The next van, I would like to fully do ourselves. Again, not myself, I do not have the skills for that. But it's got insulation, right? And then there's windows. But windows, just, it's shocking how much heat disappears out of glass. And so basically, when I'm actually in my van and I'm needing to try and preserve heat, is I draw these curtains, which are heat blocking curtains, because the cab in particular, what with it being 3-sided windows, it's shocking how cold it can be in there and how warm it can be back here. So I cover over that, and that blocks out most of my light source. You can possibly just about see behind me, I've also got a window over the kitchen, so that curtain is generally rolled down, and then I've got 2 little slidey windows by the bed area, and those are window covered as well. I do tend to keep them open ever so slightly for a bit of ventilation, and it's always a balance of like, oh, there's heating on, let's get the water out, and also, oh, there's heating on, let's close the window because it's cold. Probably my slight nemesis is my new vent, which is in the roof. I would like to just make a protective covering for that at night time, so I can just block out a bit of heat, particularly because it's at the high point of the van and heat rises and it just goes straight out of there. It's just a little plastic covering, so I will make a reflective slider thing for that at some point, and then that's me covered. So basically I live in darkness. So fairy lights are wonderful to add some ambience to van life, but basically if I'm in need of daylight, a bit of a somewhat vitamin D top up, then it's like open the door, get outside, go for a wee wander, and activate the other tips, which are increase your body temperature by moving. So that's kind of how it goes, really. And actually that brings me to the end of my 10 top tips and ways that I stay warm in winter. We are currently in the middle of winter. I'm surrounded by fantastic mountains which are covered in snow, looking really rather lovely. I am still questioning my choice of shorts. But I'm already sort of realizing there's a few other things that I haven't shared, but I just think most of this is fairly obvious. And yet, on the other hand, sometimes the obvious things in life can be the things that we forget, we miss, we overlook. So that's why I'm here sharing them. Hey, you stuck around to the end of the video. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. So you have earned the treat of learning why I prefer living in a van in the winter over the summer. Now, it's not necessarily a massive difference, but there is a preference. Summer is a beautiful time of year. People are on holiday, people are out and about, you know, the sun is shining, there's generally more daylight, it's warmer, there's lots of things to look forward to about the summer. I am looking forward to the summer. But in a van, I've definitely found myself feeling more stressed out in the summer than over the winter. And there's a couple of main reasons why that I'm going to share right now. So the first is that it's hot. Living in a van is hot. So you can ventilate, I can open the windows, you know, I can keep the door open, I can open the roof vent, but ultimately it is a metal tin, and no matter how good or bad the insulation is of my vehicle, it's going to get warm. Even as a white van, I'll park in the shade. Last summer was horrendous. It was 36 degrees in my van. And when I choose not to stay in campsites because I find them extortionately priced, and I will be parked in a lay-by trying to just have some privacy somewhere on the side of the road, I don't actually feel comfortable or safe very often in the night to have a door open so that I get ventilation. So I'm relying on my little windows, I'm relying on fans, and ultimately in the daytime, I'm relying on going to like my climbing gym locally or another climbing gym, because I'm generally not actually that local, to use the air conditioning for the day, to have a shower to cool off. And then I get back into my 36-degree van and it's just really hot and tough. So that's the first thing, is literally just temperature control can be quite difficult in the van in the summer, much more so than the winter when you just need to warm it up. You can layer yourself up, but if inherently it's hot outside, it's going to be hot inside. But the second thing that I find really hard and more stressful in the summer than the winter is there's just a lot more people about. Now, the UK is a very densely populated country. There are amazing areas of wide open space, but they're generally private land. I can't access them, and it's frustrating. So what that means is when more people do choose to go outside because they're inspired by the weather, and good for them, I'm happy about that, is that the competition for finding places to stop, to pull over, to park is so much higher than it is now in winter. And I find that tough, because I might be out doing a big day, a big shoot, or I might get back to the van after some traveling and need to pull over somewhere later in the day. And honestly, it feels like everywhere is full. It's ridiculous. And I find myself sort of thinking, well, I can't go anywhere today because I've actually got a parking spot. And if I move the van, someone else will come and get it. And that's really frustrating. And, you know, it's just with the more people about, it just feels like my privacy disappears more. And the campsites might be open, but they're charging a ridiculous amount each day. So I do feel forced to be on the side of the road more often than not. The car parks, you then get more wardens coming about. So ultimately, it feels like my freedom of movement is restricted a lot more. And I just feel claustrophobic, which is a big inspiration for me to like drive out of this country. But those are the two reasons, at least in this video, that I want to share as to why I fundamentally prefer living in a van in winter than summer. So ultimately, it's temperature control, get more words out, and it's freedom of movement, it's privacy, it's space, it's finding places to park and not feeling stressed out about that, because in winter, there's a lot more space and a lot less people out and about. It doesn't feel like the most positive note to end this video on, but maybe I'll just say, I love living in my van, it's great, and bring on the summer. I can't wait for slightly warmer temperatures, maybe just not too hot. 36 degrees was definitely pushing it.
Rabbit? Hi.
So I hope this has been interesting for you. Let me know if there's anything else you do when you're camping or living in your van, or anything else to stay warm, keep it clean, in the comments section below. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share this video with someone else who needs a little bit of warmth inspiration this winter. Until next time, folks, thanks for watching, enjoy your adventures, and stay wild. I'll see you soon. Can I have a little sip of tea now? Lovely jubbly. I'm on a new microphone. I'm hoping it's working okay. It's quite cool actually. New mic. Thanks, Mum. Mud. No. Mud. Ah. God, that wind is cold. Someone tell me why I'm in shorts. I don't know why I'm in shorts. This is a stupid idea. Snow, ice, mud, rain. That's it. That's all I got for you kids.